Hey everybody, hope you're doing fantastic today. Brett Tadlock, an artist here. So today I think we're going to do a quick painting on atmospheric perspective and simplicity. So just kind of how, sometimes less can be more that we're going to work with. So I have here 8x10 canvas with the handmade paper and for it. And over here I've got the watercolor palette that comes with Rebelle 7. I'm in Rebelle 7 Pro. And wanted to kind of work on that to kind of show it a little bit because I've had some people ask me about it. Like, how do you get that kind of far off distant look? And it's always through atmospheric perspective. So this is going to be a simpler painting, but yet still have a lot going on in it, painting kind of thing, if you will. So let's take a look at that. So the first thing I want to do is kind of play around with, some of the processes and show you some of the things to work with and color a little bit. So I'm going to mix some of my own color. And if you've been around for a little bit, you know I just like to do this because I just kind of like the way it goes. So I'm going to grab maybe this gouache. Let's go with the gouache filbert. And let's just put a little bit of that on there. Got some good water on there as well. And a little bit of this ultramarine purple. Kind of let those diffuse a little bit. Get kind of a feel for it. And maybe just a slight touch of black in there as well to kind of tone it down ever so slightly. Let's see what we think about that. Okay. I'll tell you what, I'm going to add just the slightest amount of white in there. So now what I'm doing is I'm kind of looking for what will be our distant kind of feel. And I know that there is a mixing palette right here that we can use. I just like doing this on here. It's just old habit, so you can use whichever. So I'm trying to get a feel for what I like. And just smallest touch of yellow in there to kind of offset some of that purple. Now I'm going to switch to my smudge brush. Bring that size down with the left bracket key. I blend all that together. A little bit more of the purple in there. And the white. And I know this takes a minute, but this is just kind of how I like to do it, to play around and get the look that I want. All right, so I think that is going to probably work and give us what we may need for it. I'm just kind of smearing it around to thin it down a little bit and see if there's kind of a look that I like. And so I'm going to go with, press Alt and select this color here. Okay, then I'm going to press Delete, and that's going to clear everything off. Next thing I want to do is come over here to the Selection tool. I'm going to go with the freehand, and I'm going to put it on the Add to Selection right there. And we're just going to kind of rough shape in a distant mountain, something like that. And now what I'm going to do is go over here and click Wet the Layer. Now if you look at this, I only wetted this area. That's all I wanted wetted. And so now that is wet, the rest is dry. I'm going to turn on my tilt because I want to start up here at the top. And I'm going to go back to my watercolor right here. I'm going to increase the opacity just a bit. Actually, I'm going to go all the way. What the heck? All right, so I'm going to lay this in up here at the top. Kind of get a little streaky with it on purpose. Now let's let that run for just a second. Again, just because, oops, that was the wrong color, my bad. This color, just a bit of that in there. No real detail. Again, just kind of let it run out. All right, now I'm going to push 4 on my keyboard, and that's going to change this to the blending brush. And I'm just going to, again, still going vertical, because I want all my marks to be vertical. Just going to kind of soften this a little bit. Like so. I'm going to push Control D for delete. And then still on 4, I'm going to come along through here, and still going vertical, I'm going to soften that edge ever so slightly. Just kind of let it fade off. So that's a very subtle thing. So I've got some blue and some purple in there. Now if I added more purple, that's going to darken it and bring it forward just a little bit, but I want this to be off in the distance. All right. Now if I want, I can switch to 5 here, or click on the eraser, kind of tighten up just a little bit of that edge. Ever so much, like so. And then there we go. Okay, and then I can come down here, take this little smudge tool, and just kind of again soften all that. Even bring it up in size. Just want it to really fade off into nothing. So I'm looking for this top edge is what I'm looking for. Okay, so now we've got that there. Let's go ahead and make a new layer. And on the new layer, we're going to go back to our selection tool. And let's say that we want right about here. We want to have maybe another mountain. This, perhaps. Kind of go there. So now let's go back to this bluish color. Click on it. And now we're going to drop down to right about here. And we're going to bring it over ever so slightly. And just kind of warm it up. See how that turned a little bit of a, almost purplish, but not quite. Still in this gray area. All right, again, we're going to wet the area. And we're going to pause diffusion. We're going to come back to the paintbrush, the watercolor. And we're going to put in some dark up here at the top. And we're going to streak it. Like so. So now we've got that going in there. We're just kind of laying down some of the areas here. And blur, kind of soften that bottom edge a little bit. I'm going up with my stroke here. Like so. Okay. So that now we've got that there. And we can unpause. Now I can take and come over here and grab my texture. Again, just kind of here and there drying it. And you can see how it's going to run around it. So that's going to add a little bit of texture. And let's add a little bit of texture right here. Maybe something like that. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to push T. I don't like how wide this is, so I'm going to bring that in. I'm going to bring it up. That maybe over just a little bit there. Hit enter. That's going to select it, and I'm going to come back to my selection tool, and let's add a little bit to that, like so. Go back to our paintbrush. Like that. Maybe even grab this to add a little bit more. So this kind of becomes like a rocky area. Like Control D. Deselect it. So now you can see by just going a little bit darker in value how that pulls that ahead for us. I'm going to go with my blending tool and I'm going to soften this here at the bottom because I don't want that really caught area there. Again, I want it to kind of fade off like so. Okay. Let's merge those together a little bit more. Now we can take the water tool and add some water here and there. And really encourage this to drip in certain spots. Like say, for example, we want to have that come down a little bit. Okay. All right, now I'm going to go here and click on Lock Transparency because I think I want to grab the pen tool, fountain pen, and just up here at the top, I want to come along and add in just a little bit of extra color. That's a little too much water, so I'm going to pull that back a little bit. Again, I'll break that up like so. And that just gave me the ability to go up there. Now I can also come back to this pen tool, take all the water out of it, and still come back in through here just a little bit. Oops, to make it a little bit more distinct. Grab my water tool, come along the bottom here. Even go to, back to my gouache, go to 4, soften it just a little bit. Let's bring that overall size down. So I just want to kind of give this a little bit of a separation, like so. I just think it adds some interest. Okay. And just take, grab just a little bit back to 1. I'll put one of the things with doing this too is that you can kind of look at it and ask yourself, where do I want to see some shadows, like recessed areas? How do I want to play around with it? And if you get it to where you like, you can just push D to pause it and see if that's exactly where you want it. And you can play around with other tools. You don't have to stick with just this one just because I'm sticking with it. Like I can go over here to the marker tool, for example. Let's go with dry. Put it on 4. I'm going to soften that. I got that a little too dark. There we go. That gives us just a nice little contrast there. Something kind of like that. I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. I'm going to play around with some of that. Okay. And then back in here, maybe some of these darker areas, I want to kind of blend them a little bit. So keep some of that top part, but then maybe soften out some of that bottom. Okay. And then if you want, you can come back later with like the pencil tool or something like that, and you can zoom in and you can look for where these crevices are, and you can come in and add highlights and add more shadows and details and do like, you know, some of those traditional Japanese or Chinese ink paintings and that kind of stuff. And push period to get this back to full screen. And kind of play around with that. But now we've got 2 layers of atmospheric perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and fast dry that. Okay, so that way I've got it there. And let's go with one more layer to kind of really push it home. Let's do here. Now with my same color here, I'm going to go a little bit darker. And I'm going to come over just again ever so slightly. So I'm just putting a little bit more of this reddish color in it. Okay, and I can unpause that. So let's say, let's do this. Let's come back to the watercolor brush. And let's put this. We're going to pause diffusion. Maybe down here. Maybe there's like this. Okay. And one of the reasons I like doing this with the lasso tool is because I can just kind of look at the shape, you know, the overall silhouette of what I'm doing, and see if it's something that I like, that I think is interesting. And then when I get something, I can use that. Just say kind of maybe an outcropping, something like that. Okay. Let's go with the gouache. Let's do the gouache Bristol. Oh, there we go. That's kind of cool looking. Let's just kind of lay this in here. Now this has a lot of water in it, so this is really going to disperse. So we're probably going to build this up in layers a little bit. So I'm going to unpause it and pause it again real quick. I'm going to go ahead and fast dry that. So it's still wet. See, it's just damp. But that's not going to, if I unpause it, that's not going to spread out. Okay, but if I put something else on here, it will. Okay, and I want to add just a little bit more color to this. Something like that. It's really subtle. Okay, I'm going to darken this down here. Because even though it's going to diffuse up, because I'm still tilted, it's going to keep it towards that bottom a little bit. So I think that's kind of interesting. Let's grab a little of this bone black. Ever so slightly some in here. I'm even going to bring this down in size. And just really kind of scribbling. Diffuse. Pause it. Fast dry it. You can also use D and F. D to pause, F to fast dry. Maybe in here. So D, F. So now it's fast dried. A little on the bottom here to kind of seat this. F. Okay, so now I'm going to deselect that, Control D. And now I have this really kind of interesting shape here with this darker shape of shoreline or whatever. But see how we've got these moving forward, right? And we've got a little bit going in there. So I'm going to push 4 on this. And I'm going to go straight down. Just dragging a little bit of that paint. And staying fairly vertical. Like so. Now see, this is, see how that pulled some of that down in there, some of that moisture? Okay. Alright, I can even grab a little bit of the splats over there and add just a little bit. And that's going to run down in there. Just like so. Push 1 again. And come back in here. And see how that diffuses. It kind of diffuses out and then it'll start running down. And it gives us that feeling of, hey, there's something going on here. Again, just vertical lines. Give it a little bit of time to disperse out. And just kind of pay attention to what's above it so that you're kind of matching it slightly. Okay. So now we've got that there. I'm going to grab 4, again vertical, up and down, work my way across, and then just back horizontal, skipping some space. So super easy reflection. Now another way you can do it is you could take this here, flip it upside down, and then bump it up to it, and then just kind of go through it. Okay, let me show you what that looks like. So let's just right click on the layer, then go to duplicate layer, which is also Control-Shift-D, duplicate, and we're going to T, transform. We're going to come over here, and you can see right here it says flip vertical, just like that. And that's straight down so that it matches up like so. There is a little bit of there's a little bleed over, but we'll fix that. Okay, tell it okay. We can take our selection tool, or if you want to make it super easy, you can just click on this layer right here. So now we've selected this layer, but we've got these up here, and then we can hit, we've still got add to selection. So then we just come along through here like so, and delete. Control D. And now we can take our add to selection, and if you just take and draw across, and all I'm doing is making these really zigzag selections, and because it's set to add to, it's going to grab those. You fill them in, I hit delete, Control D to so you can see it a little better. You can see how we've got some of that into waves. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. Okay, just like that. And now I could go back to my brush with B, make sure I'm on 4. And now I could pull down just some random stuff here. Kind of what we were doing before, but just a little bit different. You can make this a little bit bigger. And you just kind of go through it like so. And then or here and there. Again, go to the selection tool. And just the key thing for this is keep it mostly horizontal. Doesn't have to be perfect. Delete, Control D. Okay. So now we've got nice little reflections there, and you can putter around with this as much as you want to. All right. So we've got that there. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add just a little bit more something interesting here, because this is kind of boring. But now we've got our atmospheric perspective. We've got 1, 2, 3 layers. So let's add a little bit more stuff here. So something maybe interesting. Kind of go with maybe a tree. And I've got tree stencils, so if you want to use those, you can. And just something, I'm thinking like kind of maybe an old gnarled tree. A little too straight over there. There we go. Like that. Have this darker color. Actually, I'm going to grab one of these darker colors here. I'm going to go with B. And just Alt click. And then I'm going to go to my inking brush, do Control D, and let's just kind of, well, first size brush. I'm going to bring that left bracket all the way down to 1, water, well 8, and then 1 is down for water. And just kind of increase pressure as I come in. And just kind of flick these out. Like so. Just a light touch. Fill it in here and there. Now this is really why I have the stencils that I use. Because I can go ahead and do this quickly if I'm trying to get something done Just kind of an old, gnarled up tree, like so. Maybe some roots coming off of it. Something like that. So you can do as much of that as you want, as little as you want. I think it's one of those things that can be really intriguing. So now that we've got that there, let's switch over to our marker tool. We're going to leave it on the dry. Let's zoom in just a little bit and see how these are all kind of here. Let's just kind of grab those on the bottom and just kind of soften them out. Which really kind of helps seat them. You can do the same with the tree over here. Just kind of smudge around on it, and that'll thin it out a little bit and make it a little bit more interesting. Okay. Right. Now, if there's any of these you don't like, just switch over to like 5 on here. You can just erase them, just like this. That breaks it up a little bit, and you're like, oh, I kind of like that better, which I think I do. I kind of like the sparseness of it. And then 4, I'm just going to kind of bring that down in size and just kind of smudge this around a little bit. I can also push 1 if I want to add a little bit to it as well. Maybe some of those are a little bit thicker. And I like using this dry one because it just kind of gives you a nice smudgy brush feel. And there's no water to it or thinner or anything, so it's just going to stay wherever you put it. And I can even come in here and add, and then push 4. So something like that. I kind of like that because it's, again, it's giving it that feeling of that there's life here, but it's, you know, a little sparse. I don't think I like these here, so I'm going to go ahead and delete those. Clean this out. I can also just do this. I go to my selection tool, just right around, delete, which is quicker. Same thing for this over here. I don't think I care for those, so let's go ahead and delete those. I want this tree to just like the D. Yeah, that kind of clears it up a little bit. I think that's kind of interesting. All right, so now see how that really kind of brings that forward. All right, so we've got this trees and stuff here. We've got reflection. We've got rocks. Then we've got background mountain and really far distant mountain. Okay, so we can add even more interest here really quick if we wanted to. We could add maybe some clouds in through here. Maybe we want to add a little bit of sky interest to kind of help pull some of it together. So let's see about doing that. Let's come down here to this layer. And I'm going to drag it behind that mountain. And let's grab a bluish color. Let's go a little bit more saturated. Well, not that much. Something like, maybe something like that. Gouache brush. And let's see what we got here. Gouache dry. Let's try that one. Okay. It's pretty subtle. A bit more saturated. Yeah, there we go. And we're just kind of reverse painting in some blue. And then push 4. Reverse painting means that I'm leaving white space for the clouds instead of painting the clouds. I'm just kind of painting in the blue. Really subtle like that. Can go in. We can also grab a little bit of that kind of color and add some of that in. And bring some of that around. And then let's grab the soft and just kind of go around in curling motions and soften some of that. Jump down here and soften some of that too. So now we've got some clouds built in here a little bit. Let's go a little bit more. Like so. Press in and soften those out. There we go. Now one thing I don't like is how this tree is kind of going up into here. So we can, one of the great things about this, we can grab this, press T, get over, offset it here, we can bring it over here. I kind of like it a little more right there. That's going to work. Now that leaves that nice right there. So let's hit duplicate and T, and let's flip horizontal. Let's scrunch that in. Maybe something like, we can even grab the warp tool. There we go. Let's actually increase those. There we are. Kind of stretch these out a little bit. Something like quickly change this around. Hit enter. All right. So now we got that. This looks kind of weird. So let's back to the gouache. Let's go to 5. Delete some of that. Let's change that brush. Let's go to the squash filbert. Then we can go to 4 for the same one. We've broken it up a little bit. We can go to the one underneath it. Kind of soften it a little bit. Smear some of that around. And then I'm going to bring this up in size. Take this one, I'm going to right click on it and tell it to merge layer. Back in here, and I'm just going to pull that down a little bit and haze it out. Just like that. I want to soften this a little bit so it's not quite competing with it as badly. And that just helps bring in that cloud feel a little bit more. And I'm just going to take this, bring the size down, and just kind of smudge it up into, so I'm going this way. Like that. Let's bring that soften a little bit. There we go. Intriguing. Let's do one more thing. So I'm going to go to my stencils, stencil library. I'm going to grab these waterfall stencils. And this is actually what it should look like. The other one was actually the invert. Not showing up that way, but hey, who cares? Alright, so let's bring that down and drag it. Let me put one. You know what, I'm gonna kind of go against the grain a little bit as far as like the way it would work really in nature. I'm just gonna go right here to the very top layer. Go with this on, go a little bit lighter. And we can even use the marker tool for this. Every time I do these waterfalls, I think of, there's a scene in Star Wars, I think it is. So now that I've got that top part there, I'm just going to drag this down and pen's acting up. Right click, drag it down. Grab here, press shift. If I come across, it lets me do it this way, up and down. Anyway, there's a scene in Star Wars where they have like all these waterfalls, and apparently that was done with salt. So I thought that was kind of cool. Select the marker tool, just kind of going up and down. A little something like that. And backspace, get rid of it. Let's go with the pencil. Shoot, I forgot that that defaults to that gray. My bad. Just kind of zigzagging vertical. Like so. Something like that. Maybe something coming out. This. Like that. And then just a little bit thicker down here at the bottom. And push 4 and just kind of fade it off into that mist, like so. Sorry about the creaky chair. All right. I'm going to come down here, press 1, bring that size back down. Just going to come across a water line really quick, like that. If you don't like that, then just Control Z it and go to something a little bit sharper, which could be the pen. Okay, and then just add in a water line, like, and again you can come down through here and add in some extra water, like so. So just I could come down here as well. This is my bird stencils, so let's resize that down to right, maybe something like that, and then go to the lines and tell it to border, airbrush. Let's go with fish color here. Just kind of lay that in. And back, right click on it, backspace to get rid of it. And I think we may need a little bit more of an interest. Let's go with something stark. Let's see. So I think before I do something bold here, let's grab this. This is Japanese junk stencils. Let's bring that down in size. Maybe something like that. Barest hint of it. So I'm going to put it down here on this layer. And we'll grab that again. Border. Darker. Towards the top. Okay, something like that. And let's right click, backspace. Okay. Still in the airbrush tool here, I'm going to hit 4. Just kind of slightly blur. Control Z. Some of that. Shift Control Z to do it back. Shift Control Z. I'll go back up here to this. It's a little bit different of a smudge. The nice thing is that that leaves that there, so see, I can bring it right back. Up in size. I could just go over here and click on it and hide it again. Oops, there we go. 4. My pen tool, bluish color. Just kind of streak that in like that. That's going to set those back so they're a little softer. So now look at the different layers we've got. Atmospheric perspective. We got sky, 1. This mountain, 2, 3, maybe even 4, 5, 6 different layers. So now what I want to do is come up here on this, make a new one. I'm just going to grab the selection tool and ever so slightly. I want to have just kind of an abstract, maybe something like that. Let's go with red. It helps to put it on the right one. Control D. There we go, like that. Shape again. Let's go with this. Black. D. Actually, let me just grab the pen tool. Maybe something like that. I'm going to thin that out a little bit, so I'm going to go with 5. 4. And so what I'm thinking is maybe it's like a woman waiting for her fisherman husband to come back or something. You know, just kind of a neat little thing. And so now I can leave this here. I can go here, click this, go with a little darker. I'm going to add gouache. Let's bring that down just a little bit. Bring the size way down. Add in just a little bit of interest. And then zoom it out. The only other thing I want to do, F. Excuse me. That popped out of nowhere. So I fast dried it. So I just want to grab the ink brush again. And I'm going to grab a little bit of this. I'm just going to... Oh, whoops. Thought I turned that off. Just want to add in a little bit more of an indication of a horizon line and some stuff coming through here. So I'm going to put it on 4. A bit bigger. Now that I have those lines in there, I can just smear this across a little bit. Like so. So to me that just kind of gives it just that touch of interest. So it looks like maybe they're coming back. And I want to put just... at least a little dot there. And hit 4. For this, let's go to pure white. Oh, I could have just clicked on that, I guess. Like they've got lanterns on there. 4, just kind of circle it out. Press 1. Just kind of put the dot back on it. And then I'm going to push 1. Select that. Bring that all the way down to size 1. I think there's this little hints of color, just gives a little bit more interest. All right, so there we go. Just something that's kind of a nice way to practice atmospheric perspective is start off with something in the background that's really light. Go up in value like 1 or 2 steps and create the next layer. Go up in value, or really I should say down in value, so you're darkening. So you have this when you go down in value a couple steps, down in value a couple steps, and you've got these. Now one thing with this right here, for these, which layer did I put the one? Hang on. There we go. So you could play around with this and bring the opacity down a little bit. And that's going to kind of put it on a little bit more par with this. Okay, instead of being so much on par with this, and that's going to push it back a little bit more. And we can zoom that in. And the lights I'm not worried about, those being a little bit darker. Even those little things right there, because those could be people. And I'll put it on 4. And I'm just going to kind of, again, soften this here. I just want to kind of fade it. Like that. So there we go. But I think that's kind of a neat way to give you a way to practice simply atmospheric perspective. And then from there, you could really start adding different things. You could add some more color with, foliage. You could add some trees up here to kind of show you, let me show you what that looks like. So let's go to this layer here. We'll add in, let's see, I think I've got some trees. Yeah, here we go. Just go with these really abstract looking ones. Go way down in size. Even smaller. Zoom in. Border. Colors. Airbrush. Helps if you put it on 1. Bring it over a little bit. Bring it over a little bit. Bring that down in size. There we go. And I know that there's a waterfall coming out of the top up here, but maybe that's a natural spring that wells up through the mountain. I've heard of that happening before. I don't know if the pressure underground builds up and pushes it out. We can just kind of go along here. And add these in. And then when we've got enough of them, just get rid of this. Then go back to the dry. Put it on 4. Just really kind of seat these in there. And if you don't want to put these on here, don't put them on here. Totally 1000% up to you. But it can be another way to kind of add in some interest. Okay. So there we go. So let's just call it long trip home or something like that. But I think it's interesting. Just kind of a nice, simple, somewhat abstract, somewhat, realistic, whatever. kind of thing with it. Again, you can sit here and putter around with stuff to your heart's content. Add in things. Add in more softening. Clouds. You could even come around this one a little bit if you wanted to. Go to 5. So maybe that's just kind of cruising around through there. Something like that. Totally up to you. However much you want to soften it and play around. All right. So starting to pitter and putter around a little bit. So I think I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one and just be done with it. If you have questions about it, definitely let me know. More than happy to answer them. But I just wanted this to be kind of a nice little, lesson on atmospheric perspective more than anything else. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've gotten something out of it. And I guess with that, I'll see you on the next one. Have a great day. Be blessed. Okay, so I'm not actually quite done. I decided after looking at this, I wanted to add in a little bit more color here. So what I did was grab a little bit of pink here just to kind of come in and put some of this. And using the rough wet brush right here. And you can use really any spatter brush or whatever. I just chose these 3 different pinkish, purplish colors. Starting with the middle, going a little bit darker, going lighter. I just kind of splattered them in a little bit and then reflected it down here in the water. And along through here as well. So just to add a little bit more life and vibrance to it, I thought it needed it and wanted to put that there. So all you got to do is just when you decide you want to do this, just go in through here and you can either erase it by pushing 5 with on the keyboard and then just kind of tapping to cut a few holes in through it here and there to see some of the branches. And then once you've got that kind of how you like it, just go back and put some of the highlights on it. And then from there, and you do this sparingly, then hit 4 and just kind of blend it in a little bit. And that gives you that nice kind of light hitting it and kind of speckling through it. Okay. So anyway, like I said, just wanted to add a little bit more color to it because I thought it gave it something kind of cool to look at and a little bit more balance. So really done with it this time. All right. Have a great time. See you on the next one.